Hey, this is Mark A. Altman.
And this is DAREN DOCHTERMAN.
And this is Ashley Miller.
And we are the Inglorious Treksperts.
And we're back. It's Trek Wars, top 10 Star Wars episodes. And if we're going to war, we need our general, Robert Meyer Burnett. You general or an admiral, or what are you anyway, Rob Meyer Burnett? What rank did you want?
I'm a Grand Moff.
You're a Grand Moff.
For this show, I'm a Grand Moff.
Grand Moff Burnett. Okay, there you go. Grand Meyer Burnett.
He's Grand Moff Moses.
Rob is once again joining us from the observatory. And we're doing the Star Wars episodes. That means Space Wars or Space Battles. We've called it Star Trek Troopers. We've called it Trek Wars, whatever you want to call it. We never use the title. But it's going to be about the best episodes in which there's war. And I know a lot of you, that seems to be all you care about with Star Trek. Don't care about the allegories and the characters and the progressive politics. All you care about is the fucking battles. So today we're going to do battles. So it's going to be a lot of fighting and excitement, and it's
like that.
Delightful. Yeah, it's going to be delightful. So we're very excited to bring that to you. And of course, we're very excited to be entering 2025, an all new year of excitement. So before we get started, I got to ask you guys, what's your Trek solution? No, Trek solution? Your Trek resolution, your New Year's resolutions, potentially that involve Trek, potentially that don't, Robert.
I resolve to go even more boldly into the new year and to achieve higher heights and be more productive and be more open and be more tolerant, perhaps, of things I don't like.
That's very. Oh, really? Things you don't like? I say that shorter than most people's diets and exercise plans. It'll be you not saying anything negative about. And I shouldn't say negative because actually I think that's a fallacy about you. People say that you're negative.
I am not.
But you're not.
No.
If you say that he's not, isn't that a negative statement?
No, but he's not a negative guy. He's a very positive guy.
I mean, I did a 2.5 hour observations on how much I love Star Trek the Motion Picture for its 45th anniversary, and I was going to do a show about how Lower Decks decanonized Star Trek Discovery. And
Isn't that amazing?
I was stunned, to be honest.
With one shot, it was fantastic. Well, two shots, because they also had that stupid bird of prey from that
And
show.
then they comment on it. So, So
I think the whole idea that Discovery is no longer canon and that they have now said that it takes place in another multiverse, fantastic.
Thank you, Mike McMahon.
Right? It's like an Animal House when the girl goes through the window, the Playboy Playmate lands in the guy's bed. Thanks God. It's like because that way people who like Discovery enjoy it. Just don't mess with our canon.
Right.
It's because, people are like, oh, what do you care? It's like, we actually value canon. Part of what is so cool about Star Trek is that it is it's like history, but it's phony history. It's a fake history, but to us, it's real.
Our story needs to make sense.
And these are beloved characters. And it's like, do whatever you want with your characters, but don't take characters that were created by Gene Roddenberry, Gene Kuhn, and DC Fontana, and then bastardize them. And then say, Spock had a sister that he doesn't talk about. We don't like to talk about it. It's like, so, but you know what? If you love that, that's great. But it's another universe. And that's the universe you're watching. And in that universe, that all exists. And that's great. But it's not in the universe that we've come to know as the Prime universe.
That's right.
Which
and now
by definition means Strange New Worlds isn't canonical either.
I know. People are twisting themselves in the knots to say that it's not.
It's obviously not.
Well, we love canon more than Sideshow Mel.
You can enjoy those shows in their universe. It's fine.
Right. That's right. And now we no longer have to complain about, the lack of canon because it's their canon. In that universe, that's what happened.
Although I feel sad for the Star Trek Online guys. You know, they were canonistas and they had to bend themselves backwards to figure out how everything worked. And now they're going to have to figure out how to undo everything.
It's okay. It's not real. It's a game.
And it's kind of like our certain people who, you know, the autobiography of Spock, where all of a sudden they had to redo that to put Michael Burnham into that book, which was absurd,
silly,
and now they don't. I mean, now they could have.
I did find it interesting that they finally said Spock's other name, and it was Mixus Pitalik.
Don't say that 3 times.
Or backwards.
Yeah, but or backwards.
Flip the skim.
But it's great. And nobody's saying don't watch these shows or you shouldn't like these shows. Just saying it's a different universe. It's another universe.
It's the Discovery verse,
in which you could have called it friend. It's fine.
That's right.
You know, it's just like, don't change all this stuff that we've spent a lifetime accumulating knowledge of.
Yeah.
It's interesting, Mark. I mean, I've often wondered, I've mused, this is kind of an esoteric concept, but if an IP has colonized your brain, the way that Star Trek has colonized our brains, and the way that it has shaped a culture. So Star Trek is part of pop culture. Star Trek is part of American history. Is there a responsibility to make sure that the same way we preserve films or preserve literature, or in the Smithsonian, they keep things, is there a responsibility to preserve an IP across generations, so to speak?
You know, honestly, I don't think there is, but then don't be surprised when everyone doesn't show up.
Yeah. Well,
I think Star Trek's unique, though. It's like if they change the continuity of NCIS, do you care?
No,
probably not
at all.
Right? But Star Trek is a unique thing. So,
it has a cultural footprint.
Yeah.
But unlike, something like NCIS, but here's an example, a literary example, right? So, Edgar Rice Burroughs, Tarzan, Philip Jose Farmer, Tarzan, those two things don't agree, but that's okay, right? Because nobody sat and said, well, shit, now we have to reconcile Philip Jose Farmer with Edgar Rice Burroughs. Right? Nobody said that. Edgar Rice Burroughs' Tarzan gets to live in that universe.
We have to rectify the Tarzan cinematic universe.
That's right. And who cares? I mean, I understand why people care, but who cares?
The first thing people will say is, oh, but Star Trek contradicted itself all the time. Okay, that's because it was the beginning and they hadn't figured it out yet.
And it's a very delicate time.
And so United Earth Space Probe Agency turns into Starfleet, the Federation. Yeah. Okay, it was a show in 1966 that nobody thought anyone would be watching in 1967.
It may be the first show that we even thought, there is a canon that is involved with the show.
The Menagerie did that. Yeah. The Menagerie 1 and 2 gave us part 1 and 2 gave us the beginnings of Star Trek canon by showing us what a Star Trek history looked like. So you could extrapolate, fans or anybody watching the show could say the United Earth Space Probe Agency was it certainly wasn't a precursor to the Federation, but it was a precursor to what would later be called the Starfleet.
Right.
Yeah. And so you could incorporate all of those things. And here's what, as Star Trek was built out, it established immutable facts. Like there was a eugenics wars that was probably started by in the heels of World War II. There was a eugenics program where human DNA was messed with and genetic supermen were created, and they seized power around the world in 1996, which means they were probably born sometime in the 50s. And so there were no nuclear platforms. It wasn't our history. Yeah. It was an alternative history, much like For All Mankind. It was an alternative history of a fictitious universe that doesn't really exist.
Which you have to be true to. And that's why I generally don't like prequels, because then you're going and you're messing around with sort of what we know to be Star Trek. People say, well, how do you reconcile that with Enterprise? Well, I don't think that's canon either. I think it's a bunch of hollow novels that the Next Generation crew were playing. It's like it's like I just don't go back. Go forward. Do whatever you want in the future, but don't go back and change what was.
And Star Trek established that precedent through 5 shows. Well, I mean, not with Enterprise necessarily, but you had the animated series, you had the movies, the feature films, you had Next Generation, you had Deep Space Nine and Voyager so from 66 to 2001, the Star Trek franchise moved forward. And while some of that stuff doesn't reconcile, for somebody who's watching that show, they made a point of that growth to be incorporated into the franchise. That's why motion picture takes place 5 years. Kirk was at a desk for 2.5 years. And as we saw over the course of those movies, 15 years since Space Seed, when you see Wrath of Khan. And all of that was part of being a fan. And the fun of it was like, wow, they're taking into consideration this fictional universe is moving forward. Yes. And then when they did Next Generation, it jumped ahead 80, 90 years and they incorporated all of that. And that was part of the franchise, is part and parcel. And that's what made fandom for it so much fun.
Yeah.
Until 2009.
And how do you define the canon? My feeling is, if it's in Mike Okuda and Denise Okuda's encyclopedia, that's it. It shouldn't be changed. They shouldn't have to rewrite it. They can add to it because new adventures, new stuff. But if it's in there, there's nothing that should happen in the show that contradicts what's already there.
Right.
There should be all of a sudden Spock has a sister, or Pike likes to cook. And Dr. Boyce is no longer on the Enterprise. It's like that, and that can happen. That could be another encyclopedia. That could be the encyclopedia for another universe that I won't buy.
Well, but
that's right. And in that universe, Vulcans are genetically not emotional.
Well, yes, right? Yes. But that was part of the fun of being a Star Trek fan. And you would think that the custodians of the IP would want to understand that part of Star Trek's appeal over the years, over the decades, was that continuity.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
now,
why
people may say, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
People may say, why are we getting so upset about this? I'll tell you, the two things get me upset this time of year, looking back. Messing with Star Trek continuity and people not remembering what I order. I hate when people say to me, I go, to go, please. And then, this is my chicken sandwich. You go, okay, is that for here or to go? Well, I just said it was for here. But, okay. And then do you want cheese? Yeah, I do want cheese. Is that for here or to go? I was like,
I want the cheese for here and everything else to go.
I mean, it's just, and it's the same thing. If you go to a sandwich, you ever get a sandwich like a Subway or something, and you go, okay, I want, the whole wheat with the turkey and the cheese, and I'll have the pepper jack. And you say, oh, great. What kind of bread do you want? I said, whole wheat. Okay. Would you like cheese on that? I mean, how many times do we have to do this? Can we just do it once and say it's done rather than have to repeat? I mean, okay, maybe you forget the first time, but come on, 3 times you're asking me the same stupid question.
You just don't like when people don't listen.
I don't like when people don't listen. It's true.
Well, I think that's more specific that you're angry.
I don't think people care.
I think it's well-founded.
Yeah, see, there you go. Agreed. I agree with Darren. I listened to what he had to say, and I agree. And I'm sorry we're getting so upset about this canon thing. But
I'm not upset.
It's just, and Mike McMahon opened this door in Lower Decks. God bless him. And I'm sure that's not what he intended, by the way. I don't think he intended to
I don't know. I don't know. It's like, cheeky bastards. They have opinions.
But, and it's so interesting because, we can't really talk about where the show ends up because some of you may not have watched it. It's too soon to do spoilers. But it is in a way the ultimate Deep Space Nine homage as well. So, yeah. Like it's whether intentional or not, and maybe it was intentional. It's a beautiful thing. And again, we're not in any way besmirching. If you're a fan of these shows like Discovery, good. Nobody's telling you not to be. We're just saying, don't have it then.
Right. We're not celebrating
kick our dog, kick the original series or Next Generation by contradicting things that have already been established about in those shows.
Let me reframe it in the most positive light possible. We're not celebrating the idea that Lower Decks is saying that discovery simply didn't happen and is wishing it out of existence into the cornfield where it belongs. Sorry, I went a little too far. What we are celebrating is that Lower Decks managed to repair a glitch in the Matrix that made Star Trek with the new shows make no sense as a bit of fictional history. And now we can reconcile it all and it all makes sense.
But I just want to say one thing, as with James Bond or as with any long running IP, there's always going to be people that discover things for the first time. And one of the great things about
it shouldn't be the head of Amazon.
Well, yeah. Oh man, you want to bring Jennifer Salke into this conversation? But no, what I was going to
man, I don't want it because Ashley has to go. I want to get to the episode.
No, but I just want to say that I think Star Trek speaks for itself. And one of the things that we've been seeing, especially on social media, on YouTube channels, is people that are rediscovering the magic of the original series, rediscovering the magic of the first films. I like people rediscovering the magic of Star Trek, the motion picture, quite frankly. And Star Trek stands alone and speaks for itself. So it doesn't need us to speak for it, but it still endures. Even those first season episodes, which are great, still can touch and honor. And they have a lot to say. Even today, they still resonate, even though they're from the 60s.
I don't know why they wouldn't. You say it like you're surprised.
Well, I'm surprised that the kids today go back.
I mean, I just watched Sullivan's Travels. I just watched Sullivan's Travels with Isaac, and I mean that is more relevant today than ever. And I mean that was Frank Capra in the 40s. I mean, It's like, and that thing is perfect. It could be talking about Jennifer Salke. No, but I don't even get started on this James Bond thing because it's so infuriating. That's a whole nother conversation. It's like you buy MGM and you expect to have control. You don't. Everyone knows the Broccoli's control with the studio Bond, and you don't realize it. And then you find out that she's only seen the Daniel Craig Bond movies. The head of the studio hasn't even seen a Bond movie, and they have the audacity to be telling the Broccoli's what they should be doing with the character when they don't even understand the character.
But this is the thing that we should be celebrating. If only there were Broccoli's for Star Trek protecting the legacy.
That's right.
That's right.
Eat your broccoli.
No, I sure. And look, and I'm the first to say I disagree with the Broccoli's on many things.
Yes,
like many things, and I don't think it should take 8 years between Bond movies anymore.
It used to take 2, Mark. We got 2
Bonds. One. Dr. Noda from Russia Would Love You, Goldfinger. Yeah, then it took 2. And then it became 19 years
to make it.
I'd like to be alive for the next Bond movie.
It took 2 up until 89 and License to Kill when Kevin McClory and the Broccoli's still were fighting.
Okay, this is all true, but none of this concerns the Star Trek Treksperts 10 by 10 holiday countdown.
Speaking of fighting.
And today, like you're fighting, we're celebrating the top 10 Trek Wars episodes ever. These are episodes that involve combat, Star Trek Troopers, war. What is it good for? In the words of the great Bruce Springsteen.
Absolutely
and yes, I know
nothing.
I know it was a cover.
Except
he didn't
good
actually
drama.
write it, but it sounds better to say Bruce Springsteen said it. So anyway, don't get me on that. Okay, I'm still trying to make up for that Frampton Comes Alive joke from 3 weeks ago that I blew. Okay, so when we come back, we're going to count down our top 10 Trek Star Wars episodes ever. So stick around. There'll be more bitching and complaining. And we're back. We're back. We're back, baby.
We're back.
We're feeling a little, I think we've had a little eggnog today. A little drink of the eggnog.
Only.
I wish.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we had a nice little get together last night for some of us.
Yeah, man, I'm sorry I couldn't be there.
No, I was actually just didn't want Ashley to feel bad. I know you had your extenuating circumstances, but it was a really nice evening.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, but it was a nice evening. A lot of surprise guests.
Yeah.
The great Alan Spencer made an appearance.
How is Uncle Alan?
He was great. It was great.
He's
So
holding
good to see
together.
him.
He's doing okay.
Yeah, it was good to see him. Good to see a lot of people. A lot of good people. Some Star Trek writers. Man, I really want to pick up the phone and call Mike McMahon right now and say, Mike, tell us the truth. You're not on the podcast. I'm just you and me talking.
You're live.
I'm not recording this live on the podcast. But so was that intentional? Was that? Come on, we know it was. We know you. Nobody flagged it at the network. Nobody flagged.
Tell
You
them,
just,
my
you
friend.
just,
There's
Tell
nobody
them
at the
that.
network that would even know.
Come on.
yeah. You just
What do you even know?
wanted to make Discovery go to the cornfield. Come on, right?
They wear their opinions on their sleeve. Like there was throwaway shit. Like Moss' brother, like I think he had like a near-death experience, and he talked about how he saw Kalis, and he's like, the real one, the one who does impressions. And it was like, come on. It was just a swipe at at Kalis from Next Generation. He's just not afraid to slip in,
Oh, the one who
editorial
does
comments.
impressions. Right. Okay. Now I understand.
By the way, I have to say, no one, apparently I must just hate everyone because this whole controversy over Garrick and Bashir being together, I can't stand the people that are complaining that they're gay, and I can't stand the people that are complaining that they're that they were gay all along, because neither of them are right. The people, the homophobes, are wrong, and then the people who are saying, "Oh, they were gay all along," that's wrong too.
Yeah.
He was a total wannabe ladies' man.
Yeah.
Garrick was in love with Zial. They had a friendship.
Right.
It was not a homosexual. So it's
That's
fine in
romance
Lower Decks
isn't necessarily a romance.
because it's an alternate universe,
Yes.
right? So it's
Exactly
fine.
what we've been
And
discussing.
people are getting
Exactly.
upset about it, which is ridiculous. But at the same time, then people are saying this is the way it was always. They didn't have the guts to do this on Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Nine had the guts to do everything.
Yeah.
Well, you're telling me they didn't have the guts to do that? No, I mean,
Exactly.
I'm sorry. I'm in a mood today. I just
You're
can't
right,
stop. I'm
Let
going
me
off
tell
on
you
a rant.
something else. You're like your full Howard Beale.
No,
on
this
it.
is
Pretty
damn
amazing.
peculiar.
I am. I'm like Howardville. I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore.
Yes, you are.
Okay. Well, yes, I am. Indeed. But I'm not going to sandwiches anymore. If they can't remember my freaking sandwich, and if I'm taking it to go or eat at the restaurant, I'm done. Done. Anyway,
Hell yeah.
Okay. I'll make it myself at home. Okay.
Yeah, that's not going to
Number 10. This is our top 10 Star Wars episodes. Ashley, tell us what number 10 is.
Coming in at number 10, it's the 14th episode of season 6 of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, an episode that dares to say it's not the size of the runabout, it's the photon torpedoes that you shoot with it. I am referring to One Little Ship.
In the fleet of an eye.
They're getting smaller.
I don't feel any smaller. A dangerous experiment turns deadly.
Something's wrong. The Jem'Hadar are coming around for another pass.
In the heat of battle,
Return fire, Mr. Worf. Surrender, or you will all be killed.
a bitter enemy takes control.
The Defiant is ours.
In the face of death, victory needs a hero.
Fire.
On the next Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Which has the most insane premise ever, and yet strangely it works in the most delightful and unexpected ways. Short version thumbnail sketch is that we're in the middle of the Dominion War. The Defiant is investigating an anomaly, as you're wont to do on Star Trek. The Rubicon runabout heads into the anomaly, gets shrunk down, and when they come back, it seems that the Defiant has come under attack by the Jem'Hadar. The Jem'Hadar are all over the Defiant, and hilarity ensues. Now, you might ask yourself, why is this particular episode on this list? Because there are plenty of episodes of Star Trek Deep Space Nine that involve themselves with war. In fact, it would be difficult to not point at an episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine that on some level is not concerned with some aspect of war in space. Why? Because one of the most glorious moments in the history of Star Trek in terms of how we use a ship being employed to fight an enemy occurs in this episode when the Rubicon, shrunk down to a very tiny size, flies into engineering and unloads on Jem'Hadar soldiers with photon torpedoes. It is glorious and worth the price of admission. And even though it's a small thing, forgive the joke, what's significant about it is that it tells you something about how the writers really thought about their show and about the rules of the universe and looking for out-of-the-box ways to dramatize things and really asking themselves, well, what would you do? How would you handle it? What are the kinds of things that would happen? I think it's one of the reasons why that show was as creatively successful as it was. It took chances like this, and even on an episode that on paper, you watch the trailer, you're like, this is going to be silly. It turns out that it's smart and it's delightful, and somehow it winds up being on theme for the show. It's glorious.
Well, I think if the Jem'Hadar were in Fantastic Voyage, it would be this. They would just be shooting around inside Donald Pleasant's body. Donald Pleasance would be having not in the president's body with Donald Pleasance. They'd be shooting at the amoeba, at the corpuscles and the midichlorians or whatever the hell they are in the body. And this is a good way to kick us off, because this was to Deep Space Nine what Rascals was to TNG. An episode that should not have worked, that was ridiculous, that if I read TV Guide, I'd be like, oh, well, Fonzie's jumping the shark this week. But it actually is a great episode. And when the little Defiant, it's like Eagle Moss Defiant, starts to attack the Jem'Hadar, it's great. It's great. and it isn't with our thesis. It's like, war, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Say it again. War, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Listen to me. I could go on, but I don't want to ruin this beautiful
so much feeling
song.
into those lyrics.
Oh, God.
But you know what it is good for? It's good for building up the industrial complex. It's good for creating new devices for use in space and other places. And it's good for thinning out the herd.
Well, can you do Eisenhower? Can you do an Eisenhower voice? You can warn us about the military-industrial complex?
I absolutely cannot.
Oh, okay. You know what it means? The destruction of innocent lives. It means tears to thousands of mothers' eyes when their sons go off to fight and lose their lives. Nobody knows what I'm talking about at home, because this song came out in 1970, and if they're not a Springsteen fan, they don't remember the Edwin Starr version anyway. So I don't even know what I'm talking about. So
what about Frankie Goes to Hollywood?
Oh yeah, that was Two Tribes. That wasn't. Did they do the cover of War?
They did War.
They did.
What is it good for?
Absolutely nothing.
Say it again.
See, I was thinking of Two Tribes. The best song,
when two tribes go to war,
second best song about nuclear war, next to Nina's yes, next to Luft Balloons. Yes, this is the second best song about nuclear war. I gotta give Nina. You know why Nina gets the nod over Frankie Goes to Hollywood?
It has Captain Kirk in it.
Because it has Captain Kirk in both the English and the German version. Right. So it's a twosome. Okay. Anyway, that was one little ship. Our pick for the number 10 episode of Top 10 Star Trek Star Wars episodes. And in number 9, from the most recent iteration of Star Trek, which is canon, is Star Trek Episode 10, The Last Generation.
The fleet is being controlled by the Collective. The Borg are here. That cube is projecting a signal across the solar system.
Jack is there.
And the only way to save Earth is to sever that connection, no matter the cost. What began over 35 years ago ends tonight.
We are all that is left of Starfleet. Weapons ready for another run.
Otherwise known as the Return of the Jedi episode.
You mean Star Trek Picard?
We know. It's a little
episode 10, season 3.
Yeah, Picard episode 10. We know it's a little Return of the Jedi, but you know what? It's really exciting to see, Dr. Crusher piloting the Enterprise D as they attack a Borg cube and put an end, finally, at long last, to the Borg menace. And of course, there's a terrible assault on the space dock, which is the only thing that can prevent the assimilation of Earth. It's holding the line. Hold the line. And we know how exciting that is for DAREN DOCHTERMAN.
I would be leading the attack against Space Dock.
What?
I would be leading the attack against Space Dock.
You would be leading the attack on Space Dock. Yeah, but it's a very exciting, viscerally charged and given the advances in visual effects, it is it's a very cool, arguably a little on the video game side, but it's a lot of fun, and it does sort of give a really nice coda to what was a wonderful 10 episodes of Star Trek. And
I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, please.
I was going to say, so what it really did for me in terms of the Enterprise D is it gave us what I think having a next generation movie promised and never delivered, right? Which was to really see the D in all of her glory, just kind of kicking ass and taking names. And it looked freaking great. And the Borg cube was huge and it was scary. And what was happening was exciting. And it brought so many things to life in such a visceral way. And it kept the stakes centered in the right place. The way that it managed the battle around Space Dock, which, by the way, is not just Space Dock. It's freaking massive, dude. And, clearly there's precedent.
Darren's rolling his eyes for those of you.
I'm just grinning.
It was the 11001001 sized Space Dock.
Right.
Supersized.
The bigger one.
Supersize me.
The bigger one.
Supersize me, except even more so. Clearly, Deep Space Nine showed us that sometimes these gigantic space stations are, in fact, incredible defensive installations, which apparently it was. But anyway, that fight, the other part of that fight with what would eventually become, spoiler alert, the Enterprise G, was also terrific, not just because it was a bunch of ships and there was space dock and there were phasers and blasting and all that other stuff. It's because we got to see future Captain 7 of 9, really just kind of taking the situation at hand and everybody being smart and being brave and feeling like they were in real jeopardy and real danger because the crew from the next generation was on the Enterprise D. What was going to happen? It was really well structured, really well depicted, and it was just an incredibly rousing end to those 10 episodes and just an incredibly satisfying space battle.
You said it better than I could have, because I'm kind of torn, and I think Rob would probably agree. I kind of feel like ships should move like Spanish galleons. So in space, whether that's scientifically accurate or not, I don't care. I think that the ships should lumber around and be more like aircraft carriers. And this was anything but. This was, moving like, banking and like a Star Wars ship. But it's so viscerally exciting, and what you described is exactly right. That I forgive the trespasses, and I just accept that this is kind of cool. And even if it goes against sort of the way that I see Star Trek ships working, but it's great. It's really fun, and it definitely belongs on our list.
I agree with what you said, but I want to go back to Encounter at Farpoint. And, Encounter at Farpoint changed the way, and we're going to talk about sea battle-esque space battles in a few minutes. But in Encounter at Farpoint, when the Enterprise D saucer, when the saucer separation occurs, and you see the saucer peel away from the drive section, the way ships moved in the Star Wars manner sort of changed Star Trek space battles forever. And you could see these large capital ships moving much quicker, for better or for worse. But in space, they could. I mean, you really could, with the kind of computer technology and the way these computers could run such battles. I'll buy into it. It's not as visually striking, but I'll give it a pass. I'll give it a pass.
But it's good. It's good that Ashley lets us know that like Garrick and Bashir, he loves the D.
I love the D, especially when it's so big and glorious and it moves so fast. Wait, what? Oh no! Damn it!
When you talk about Rob, the battle bridge sailing away, it makes me think, did you watch that Yacht Rock documentary on HBO?
I did. Yes. I did.
And I hated that music. I hated that music when I was growing up.
But now I
love that documentary. It made me go back and listen to Christopher Cross and Michael McDonald. I hated all that shit. And I was like, this is so great. And I love that documentary.
Sailing takes me away to where I've heard it could be.
You should edit a music video for the next creation convention and put it in a competition.
I believe that's your job.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Rob, you've been drafted. They drafted me.
They drafted me.
The Yacht Rock. I mean, Sure.
Because we know people who could probably get you to the convention if you want to
Really?
go. Yeah, we know people. I know people. So, but you should, because you know what? We're no one's ever going to want us anywhere near Star Trek after this episode. So what the hell?
You mean the captain's yacht rock?
Yeah.
The captain's yacht rock. Oh my God! No, they just play Cole Porter and Blue Skies on that one. But no, why is that documentary? Oh my God! The best thing is when he gets a hold of Donald Fagen at the end. Did you make it to the end? And Donald Fagen tells him to fuck off. It's so great. It's like, I'm calling from that documentary. What documentary is that? The documentary I'm making. What's it about? Yacht rock. Fuck off. Boom. Oh, it's such a perfect description of what that music is, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. But I got to say, as a kid who grew up listening to 70s album-oriented rock, I like all that stuff. It was AM radio, staples of AM radio. And I mean, look, did I love Christopher Cross? Well, the theme from Arthur's a banger.
Yeah.
Did you watch it, Ashley?
I haven't watched that documentary. I just like it.
It's really good. It's really fun. And, everyone's so likable in it. You feel bad when Christopher Cross said, he was the biggest thing going. He won all these Grammys. He was huge. And it's like, I did 7 albums after that, not one of them sold. And it's like Michael McDonald, my God, he could do anything. And it was like, and then even he became, sort of like passe. But the best was all the guys from Asia.
Yeah.
Oh man. And they got into Africa. Now I do like Africa. I do like Toto. Obviously I like the Dune soundtrack the best, but I like Toto. So that was kind of cool.
I do want to point out that Donald Fagen I always thought of Donald Fagen as kind of like pop jazz nightlife because of his album The Nightfly, which was one of my favorite records, which is a beautifully produced piece. If you've ever heard The Nightfly, it's great.
I don't like Steely Dan, man. I don't like Steely Dan.
What the hell is wrong?
Really?
Never liked Steely Dan. Never will.
Well, it reminds me of the midst of the Falterpan ceremony when Dame Judith Anderson says, "Who is the keeper of the yacht rock?"
Okay. Anyway, I'm sure many of you at home are thinking, what the hell are they talking about?
Or you've already turned it off.
Or you've already turned it off. Exactly. So we're going to move on from the Yacht Rock documentary. You can check it out on Max. It's quite entertaining. If this conversation has convinced you to suddenly take up an interest. And it's great because if you've never heard Yacht Rock, you'll know exactly what it is when you watch it. I brought back a lot of memories. Okay. Number 8, it's Darren Dochterman.
Number 8, we're gonna go into the realm of Gene L. Kuhn, who introduced the Klingons in this episode. Errand of Mercy.
Captain's log, stardate 3198.4. We have reached Organia and established standard orbit. No signs of hostile activities in this area.
Thank you for your altruistic offer, Captain.
We offer you protection.
We assure you that we are in absolutely no danger.
Out of the way, Organian.
Should one Klingon soldier be killed, 1,000 Organians will die.
What are the odds now?
Less than 7,000 to 1, Captain.
Less than 7,000 to 1. Well, getting better.
It has begun.
It puts us right in the middle of a siege. The big part of the Klingon Empire takes over this little planet called Organia, which for some reason has importance. I don't know how. Can you set up a giant gun on it? I don't know.
It's position. No, it's position where it is.
Well, planets are always moving, so how could it always have a positional
It's
achievement.
strategic.
Anyway,
It's like the planet's along the neutral zone.
Yes.
But it's near the Klingon border.
It's near the Klingon border. And apparently has a race that we know nothing about. Yet we're going to go there and we're going to try and get a deal with them to tell them of the dangers of the Klingon Empire. And so we do. And they are a simple people. I forget.
But how badass is Kirk when he shows up to warn them? Him and Spock.
Well, he's amazing. I mean, and he completely shows us how Star Trek IV would never have happened that way. He can operate in unknown situations pretty damn well.
I'm not a diplomat.
Yeah.
I'm a military man, but
no, he goes in as Baroner, who is a leading citizen. Barona, yes. And he is a badass, a ram among the sheep.
He has the knack.
That's funny. Look, this is perhaps one of the most serious situations he's ever been put in. He is captured by Kur, the leader of the Klingon hordes that have just taken over the planet.
You say it so well. You say it the right way. I can't get that rolling O the way you do it.
Kur.
It's like I just like core. Engage the core.
And if there were two of him, they would be
indeed.
cores.
It's like all those words in the Lord of the Rings that I will not say here now. But look, it's a great episode. We are introduced to the Klingons here, and they are basically the Chinese army. I mean, let's not pretend that it's Russia, because it wasn't at first. These were the Chinese. I mean,
they were like the Mongols. The Mongols.
Yes, the Mongol hordes, exactly. Yeah. And John Colicos is amazing. Probably one of the greatest portrayals of a Klingon, certainly without heavy makeup, that has ever happened. It's you can truly see a match for Kirk. He almost had the better of our great captain.
And he was supposed to be recurring. It's such a shame he never came back. Because he would have been, he came back in Deep Space Nine.
He would have been glorious.
He would have been glorious, indeed. It's interesting it's on our list because we don't see any big space battles. Even in the newfangled version, there's a little bit, but not much. It's all about the foreplay. It's all about the lead up.
Yeah,
to, big explosions.
Wars aren't always fire wars. They are, they can be a siege, a stand down. It is very tension filled with all these Klingon troops surrounding and penetrating the city, and it's really amazing. I love this episode. You can really see the almost the dark side of the Federation, because they are equally willing to go to war for perhaps no reason. They're just ready to go.
Yeah.
And it takes the stronger will and power of the Organians to show us the error of the thinking. So it's
to show us the way.
Yeah, to show us. I want you to show me the way.
This episode is going to get bumped off all the platforms because it's going to be flagged for using music.
Not with our bad singing.
I have to say that I think one of the things that's really almost as important about this episode is it shows that our foes, the Klingons, are just as capable as we are.
Yes.
And in Kor's in the character of Kor, you see somebody that immediately Kor and Kirk respect one another. It's kind of the flip side of the Romulan commander who says in another life, I could have called you friend.
Right.
Well, now we're actually seeing what it would be like because even though they're on opposite sides, Kirk and Kor, they know each other.
Yeah.
They're the wolf
understand.
and the sheepdog. How's your mom, Kor? She's pretty good.
Yeah,
it's like Pat and Rommel. I read your book, Rommel.
Yeah.
He respected him, but he didn't like him. And it was the same thing with Kor and Kirk.
I think Kor really liked Kirk.
Yeah, I think they would have sat on a porch and had beers and shit.
Yeah, I mean, I because he even looks at Kirk when he realizes, okay, we're not going to get anywhere today. But his final line when he looks at Kirk, we're not going to fight. But you know what? It would have been glorious. And he knows, he understands. And I do think you're right. I mean, it's a real shame that we never had him come back. They could have brought him back for a movie.
Yeah, that would have been great. And Kirk and Spock, sort of on their one-man wrecking crew, is just so awesome. Kirk knows he's going to die, but he's going to do whatever he can, to do whatever damage he can while he still can. Yeah. And it's so great that, what are the odds now? And it's just that whole runner with the odds. It's long before C-3PO and Han Solo. It's so great. And the Culver City backlot works so beautifully for Organia. It's nice to see all that location work. And then, of course, the council chambers are back at Paramount, which also looks great. I mean, it's a terrific episode. And even though you don't see these massive fleets getting ready to battle, you feel it. It doesn't feel small.
Yeah.
Right.
And extremely creative use of Mini R7's props.
And the really interesting thing is this is this huge event that occurred in Star Trek history. There's this amazingly powerful race that shut down the fleets of these two major powers across the galaxy. And there were no Husnak there, by the way. But we don't see an Organian again until like 1980 when Rafe Needleman writes the Star Trek trivia.
Yeah.
How
marked
can
their
that
triumphant
be?
return. Yeah.
I still need proof of his Organian heritage, really. I want to see him turn into a bright light in front of me.
I don't know that
That's
you do.
what I want to see.
I think you would fall down in religious panic. And,
it wouldn't be panic. It would be relief.
You was yourself? Is that what you're saying?
No.
But the other thing that's worth noting, what a great cast. I mean, the guest cast. I mean, John Colicos is great, but John Abbott, played Airborne. Yep. He was great. Also Peter Bracco. Remember, it's like, I feel people coming into the Citadel and they bring violence. He's great. I mean, Joe DaGusta.
They all are. The Table of Old Men is always great.
It was just like he was the man.
We are the modern Table of Old Men.
Why do you say that? It's nobody old here. When we're old, when we're in our 70s or 80s. I'm sick of the old shit.
I'm definitely not old.
I'm young at heart.
I'm young as hell.
You are young at heart.
I'm an eternal man child. What can I say?
I'm not
afraid.
You know what
else?
Look what's behind him, for God's sake.
I love the fact that they have like a telepath on there.
Yeah.
There's a telepath on who doesn't say anything, and everyone knows what he's saying. And it was a subtle thing. I mean, they show it happening, but I love the fact that they allude to the fact that these are more powerful than your normal human beings.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Which I was like, even as a kid, I'm like, he's a telepath.
What's going on with these guys? There's something spooky going on. By the way, somebody was asking why the password yesterday for the dinner was Fidelis. And I said, well, that's the password.
That's not the password.
Yeah.
Fidelis is not the password. Fidelio was the password.
Fidelio. Okay, so Fidelio.
Not Fidelio.
Fidelio. So that was the password to your Eyes Wide Shut party, your Eyes Wide Shut birthday party.
Well, it's the password to the password to the
Eyes Wide Shut.
The Eyes Wide Shut. Which boy is really getting reassessed in a very wrong way lately.
Yeah, it's true.
I won't get into it, but it's like
the rumors that they killed him.
Everything. Eyes Wide Shut is based on a book, people.
Yeah.
It's based on a novel. And if you're going to analyze what Eyes Wide Shut means and you don't mention the book it's based on, come on now.
I think that they're people are watching it for Christmas and they're trying to give it a Christmas kind
Eyes Wide Shut is a Christmas movie.
It takes place at Christmas. There's a Christmas.
But everybody comes down the chimney.
There's lots of presents.
Number 7, Ashley Edward Miller.
Speaking of going down, number 7, From season 4 of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, episode 7, another great little concept of an episode that leverages the Dominion War, the burgeoning Dominion War, in a really interesting way, and manages to tell a story about warfare in space, combat in space, in a way that really puts our characters front and center. I am referring to Starship Down.
The first strike. Hull breach on deck 2 is the deadliest. The Jem'Hadar are changing course. Return fire! The last roll.
He's got a concussion.
Is fading fast.
This can't happen. You can't die.
Now, the one chance for survival. I only need one shot. May not be enough.
I don't think there's anybody left alive up there.
On the next Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Look, Starship Down is basically a submarine movie, right? The Defiant, the Jem'Hadar get into a dust up. The Defiant gets damaged and takes refuge inside of a gas giant, as you do. And now it's basically a game of cat and mouse, as the Defiant is hunted by the Jem'Hadar, and the crew struggles to put things back together and simply survive. The standouts of this episode, it's not just that they really did a great job of creating the tension of the situation, of really capturing the feel of a great submarine movie, like The Enemy Below or Run Silent, Run Deep, but that they made the things about the characters in the world of Deep Space Nine important, and the uniqueness of these things, they brought them to bear in a really emotional way, whether it was Bashir and Dax basically huddled together, trying to survive after a hull breach, worried that they're going to freeze to death because there's no help coming, or Cisco and Dax and Bashir having just a great line about how once upon a time he would have, he basically would have killed to have the opportunity to hold Jadzia in his arms, and it's just kind of it's a great little moment about these two people and kind of how far their relationship has come. More importantly is the moment that occurs between Major Kira and Captain Cisco, who Cisco is injured in the attack, and Kira is trying to keep him with them. And she does it by telling him fairy tales, right? Which about, the emissary and about, from Bajoran history. And she opens up to him in a way that I thought was incredibly interesting, where she basically tells him, look, I've had such reverence for you as the emissary, which was in itself a revelation, but interesting, that I never allowed myself to be your friend. And it marks a turning point, I think, in their relationship. It becomes a place for them to grow from, because finally, he can articulate this very important religious theme in the series, which is that the Bajorans should look at Cisco as though the emissary is this messianic, important religious figure to them. And Major Kira giving voice to that is just, it's huge. It's understated, but it's huge. But it's not just this intellectual statement of how the Bajorans look at Benjamin Sisko. It's an emotional statement from somebody who says, I might lose you, and that affects me on one level as a Bajoran for cultural reasons. But really, the biggest issue is it's making me reassess our entire relationship and realize that I never reached out to you, and I've never treated you fully as a human being. And it's beautiful. And again, the action's exciting. It's really well directed. It's really well written as usual. It feels silly even saying that about Deep Space Nine, because 99% of the time that's true, unless it's Move Along Home. That's why it made our list.
That sounds reasonable to me. I like that episode very much.
Me too.
And Deep Space Nine, I think you'll see a lot on this episode, on this list, because you said it before. Deep Space Nine did war better than any other Star Trek show. And it was the only show that, for multiple seasons actually dealt with a war. And it did it brilliantly. So, okay. That brings us number.
What is it good for? Deep Space Nine.
Yeah. Thank God for war. Otherwise, we wouldn't have Deep Space Nine.
Nice. And that brings us to number 6. And I have to, and this is an exciting one. So They're putting seatbelts in the theaters for this one, Darren.
Again.
Ready? Again, yeah.
Would you like me to take
we
up
would.
the mantle? So,
Yes, Rob.
what's really interesting, I've always had a thing for heroes that are trying to avert wars. You know, as far as movies go, I'm always interested in the heroes that have to stave off forces that are bigger than them to prevent a massive conflict from occurring. Maybe that was because as a kid, I was fascinated by the Cuban Missile Crisis. And, you know, Missiles of October was something I remember watching as a kid. So this particular, it's not an episode, it's a whole movie. And the movie is, of course, Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country.
The Klingon Empire has 50 years of life left to it.
To offer Klingons a safe haven within Federation space is suicide.
They're animals. Jim, they are dying.
And you, Captain Kirk, are to be our first olive branch.
Me?
The galaxy stands at a crossroads.
This is the Starship Enterprise. We've been ordered to escort you to your meeting on Earth.
Guess who's coming to dinner?
I have so wanted to meet you, Captain. One warrior to another.
Right.
On the verge of peace.
The undiscovered country. The future.
On the brink of war.
We come in peace, and you blatantly defy that.
We haven't fired.
According to our databanks, we have.
I shall blow you out of the stars.
Now, the crew of the Starship Enterprise
Will not be the instigators of full-scale war on the eve of universal peace.
They're coming about.
Battle stations.
fights not to win battles.
Incoming.
Signal our surrender.
Captain?
We surrender.
But to end them forever.
We would consider an attempt to rescue them an act of war.
There will never be a better time.
This is Captain Sulu, USS Excelsior. We stand ready to assist you.
This is fun. You do prefer it this way, as it was meant to be. Warrior to warrior.
You cannot take much more of this. Cry havoc! Kill! And let's slip the dogs of war. Fire!
Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country.
And, you know, it deals with this really interesting plot that the Romulans, the Klingons, the Federation have cooked up to continue animosity to start a war, trigger a war. And I, you know, while I wish this movie had a much bigger budget and perhaps a more adult script, more of a Hunt for Red October-ish feel to it all, it ends in one of the great rousing space conflicts, space battles, call it a space battle that we've ever seen. And it harks back to Balance of Terror. It harks back to submarine conflict. It harks back to a lot of things. But basically we have General Chang, Christopher Plummer, is out there. His cloaked ship is out there. They're trying to rush this to save an assassination from occurring. The Khitomer Accords, whatever. And it's just so exciting. And it's tense. It's fun. And you have Spock and McCoy operating on a photon torpedo and trying to get it to work. And there's all these allusions to naval and submarine conflict. And I got to tell you, the Enterprise gets the shit kicked out of her by General Chang. And you see things that you haven't, like, for the very first time, we see a photon torpedo completely penetrate the primary hull of the Starship Enterprise. And I mean, not even in other space battles have we seen something like this. And I remember it was done so dynamically. I believe that Michael Bay kind of ripped off Star Trek VI with his Pearl Harbor bomb, when you follow the bomb all the way down into the hull of the battleship in Pearl Harbor. He'll probably deny it. But, you know, there's a little crossover with the effects teams. But the battle in Star Trek VI, again, it uses three-dimensionality in very dynamic ways. And it's so much fun to watch. And then And then Han Solo, like when he comes out of the sun to aid Luke Skywalker in putting that proton torpedo right down the exhaust port, Captain Sulu shows up in the Excelsior, target that explosion and fire. And you see
It's a great moment.
You see these two ships just pummel a reshot from the Generations, or not Generations. The Generations stole the shot that was used in Generations from this. It's so good that they had to steal it for another movie.
And use it again and again. Yeah.
And use it again and again when the torpedoes are, and then they finally, ILM blows up the bird of prey in such spectacular fashion. And even, I mean, the taunting and watching Christopher Plummer, who is chewing the scenery more than anyone has probably chewed the scenery ever. I think it's really well directed. I think the effects are wonderful. I think the character moments are great because it shows our triumvirate, in the middle of this incredible sequence, and they're acting like they're 25 years old. And it's a great part of a movie that probably deserved a little more tender loving care, but man, does this end sequence, is it great. And then James Kirk does a great leap, saves Azatbur and stops an assassination from happening, or saves the Federation president.
There's one more moment I want to call out from the fight. It was just as it was beginning, when the Excelsior is on her way to join the fight, and Sulu is ordering the crew to push it, to get there faster, and it's
fly her apart then.
Fly her apart then. It was like, that was a great Sulu moment, right? It's like, target that explosion and fire is a fist pumper, but fly her apart then is a great captain moment. And it's just, he
gets a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, he does.
Like, I love at the beginning when he says, "Are you kidding?"
Yeah.
I'm still not getting his Exo 6 figure. I'm sorry.
It's all Voyager's fault.
No, I got that gorgeous mirror of him, which is like perfect. Right. It's like, I don't need the Captain Sulu. My captain's collection would be Kirk, Picard, Sisko. And when they come out with the Cage Jeffrey Hunter, then I'll
and another Kirk.
and another Kirk, correct? And I'll be good. I don't need to have Captain Sulu. Don't need it.
I actually enjoy Cliff Idleman's score for this movie. It's not Star Trek, but it sure is fun. Hearing infinite riffs on Mars, the bringer of war. It's great. And it's well done. And it's something new. It's something we haven't heard in a movie.
And the music for the battle sequences are great.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's great.
Look, I think the reason Star Trek 6 is on here, it's not, we've talked about this ad nauseum. Flawed movie, yes. Some of us really like it. Some of us don't.
Trying to be very positive,
but
Mark.
This was this was a staple of my Laserdisc era movies. That last 10 minutes, I must have watched, I don't know how many times. I love it. Because that is some great editing. It's great music, great performance. And, so it's really a really terrific space battle because, as we know from the original series, I'm not talking about the new effects, but, they were limited in terms of what they could do. The stuff was beautiful. Yeah. And it's a great shot. I mean, I got making a Star Trek right here, the Enterprise firing its phasers, but, they couldn't move around. It couldn't take battle damage. It couldn't do a lot of stuff. Star Trek 6 really did it beautifully. So when we're talking about Star Wars, Space War episodes, even the cloaked Klingon ship underneath the Enterprise that attacks Kronos 1. So there's some really great space war stuff in this. Yeah. More so than you find in a lot of the movies that we would be talking about. And it's really executed well by ILM. Beautifully done.
Yeah.
And, just to bring this back to our conversation about Errand of Mercy, right? Which didn't have a lot of fight in it, but it was about war, particularly the war between the Klingons and the Federation, and how ready the Federation and the Klingons were to go to war. In many ways, hungry for it. And in Star Trek 6, it's about the same thing. It's like it's the bookend of that, except in this case, it's not the Organians who have to prevent us from engaging in fucking Armageddon with the Klingons. It's us all of us together. It's the Klingons. It's, it's the Federation. It's like,
Sulu.
It's Sulu. Exactly. Everybody like has to do it on their own. There is no cosmic force reaching down and saying, don't fight. It's our characters having to come to that realization themselves, put it all aside, put everything on the line for peace, which I think is pretty great.
It's a beautiful arc for Sulu, too, that, he gets his command, but he doesn't follow orders. He does it for friendship. He does it for loyalty. He rushes to Kirk's aid and, basically saves the day, which is
he does it for
a wonderful
Slater.
Notion. But that he, had he not been there to help the Enterprise, between the two of us, we could kill this thing. But it was, it's great. And Christopher Plummer is great in that. And it's, regardless of what you think of the movie, the last 10, 15 minutes, are total kick-ass. It's a great montage.
I think it would have been the height of irony if Sulu had come to rescue the Enterprise and he in turn is destroyed with the Excelsior. I think that would have been
he had to sacrifice
perfect.
the Excelsior to save the Enterprise.
Well, you got what you wanted. How does it taste?
They're busting me down to Commander and I'll be back on the Enterprise.
Because my ship is gone.
Yeah.
My ship is gone. I've been fired.
But it's great. And that's one of the things I think, Rob, you were saying that the movies could do that the show couldn't. And this is a great example of a movie doing space battles and all that fun stuff, so well.
But it's not just, it's within the midst of a political thriller. I love that there's a conspiracy and I love that there's a summit, a peace summit or I just, everything about it, it feels very, very Cold War to me as it's supposed to. And I just enjoy it.
It's this total 7 days in May kind of thing. And then all of a sudden it becomes, action packed, a ton of action, which is, everybody racing to stop this assassination, which is sort of Manchurian Candidate.
Mm-hmm. And I love that mashed potatoes don't disintegrate in a phaser beam.
Well,
you get the mashed potatoes.
Because Richard Dreyfuss made them. He has a special formula, special alien formula.
This means something.
Okay, that was Star Trek 6 at number 6. The Undiscovered Country. Oh my God! Somebody sent me a script, as people often do, and they said, "Oh, look at this! This is from 1981, The Undiscovered Country. Nobody's ever seen this script. It's unbelievable. I can't believe you got to tell me more about it. I had no idea what this is." I said, "It's Star Trek 2. That was Nick Meyer's original title for Star Trek 2, but nobody was going to use that dopey title." Back in 1982 and they said, no, we're not calling it.
You used the dopey title
Country.
in 1989.
It would have made about 12 cents. They weren't wrong, by the way. The studio wasn't wrong.
Yeah.
It's only by Star Trek 6 that they've, he was able to get his way. And, by then it's like, okay, it's Star Trek 6. So it doesn't matter what you call it. The Search for More Money.
The Last Gasp.
It's epilogue, coda. It's fine. Nobody cares. So then he could get away with it. But, so no, it's just Star Trek 2 before they changed it to The Vengeance of Khan, before they changed it to The Wrath of Khan, before they changed it to Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan.
Star Trek:
Okay. Anyway, now that brings us to number 5, and Darren Dochterman is back. Tell us what it is.
Number 5 is not alive, but it is sentient. If you're going to have a war, you better practice. And you better practice over and over again. And one of the ways you do that is through war games. And in order to protect humanity in instances like this, you're going to need an AI to take over and to manage the things that make space dangerous for human beings. And in order to do that, they bring in the great computer expert who invented all the computers on the Enterprise. The Daystrom M. What are the computers? They are the M2 computers on the Enterprise. I think so. Duotronics.
It's GPT 4.5.
Yeah. All the Enterprise computers are Duotronics. The Multitronic systems, M1 through 5, M1 through 4 being not entirely successful. is the child of Dr. Richard Daystrom, who started out his career as a boy wonder in computer science. He was lauded across the galaxy for his brilliance and his facility with computer systems. And the M5 Multitronic unit that he has just perfected is being installed on the Enterprise to take over all the Enterprise's functions in this little bout of war games between it and 3 other starships.
Captain's log, stardate 4731.3. The M5 Multitronic unit has taken over total control of the Enterprise.
I can't run a starship with 20 crewmen.
The M5 can.
That thing murdered one of my crewmen, and now you tell me you can't turn it off?
Sir, sensors are picking up 4 Federation starships.
Bases firing.
Hit on the Lexington.
We're firing again, sir.
The Excalibur, a direct hit.
The Hood and Potemkin are moving off. Bases firing, Captain.
Lexington, hit again.
There's your murder charge. Deliberate, calculated. That thing is killing men and women. 4 starships, 1,600 men and women.
It misunderstood.
I believe the only way to stop the Enterprise is to destroy her. Request permission to proceed.
Anyone know which other starships they were?
Yes.
Yes.
Can I go? Ralph Needleman's quiz show, the Excalibur.
Yes.
The Lexington.
Yes.
And the Excalibur, the Lexington, and the it wasn't the Ticonderoga. It was the Rob, help me out here. The Hood, the Potemkin.
Yes.
Woohoo!
Because the Potemkin wasn't really there.
What?
The Potemkin wasn't really there. It was it was
in Russia. It was the battleship Potemkin.
Right.
It came down. It
wasn't really functional or operative. It's when the ultimate computer goes rolling down the stairs in the baby carriage, that's fucking amazing.
You know, I got a problem with this episode. Chekhov is like getting off on the ships being destroyed. It's like every time the M5 destroys a ship, he's like leaning forward. He's like, it's like,
he's
the Potemkin, the Lexington, 100 people are dead. He just like, he seems to really like be enjoying it. Like the way he's watched the next time
he's
you watch
get the high score is the deal.
He's like, he's just like, there's no remorse. There's nothing
He's very subscribed to the fate of the Potemkin because it's staffed with all Russians.
But he doesn't feel bad about it. He's like, they're moving off. It's like, okay, they're moving off. That's probably a good idea, move off.
Oh, we're moving on off. I love this episode.
The thing about this episode was, and I'm going to talk to you people who watched it for the first time in syndication, or maybe before, maybe you watched it for first run. This was the first time we saw like a fleet. Remember with the optical printer, you could see the 4 ships? Yeah. This was the coolest thing ever. Like there are 4 starships bearing down on the Enterprise. This was our Star Wars. This was crazy. This was epic. It was like 4 ships attacking poor Enterprise. And it was like, it was magical. It's like that episode is so great. And I can't even give Kuhn credit because, of course, this was a John Meredith Lucas episode and it's so relevant to today.
But I know Dorothy Fontana.
What?
Also Dorothy Fontana.
Yeah, and also Dorothy Fontana. John Meredith Lucas directed it though.
Right.
And which is so interesting. And that this was an episode, yes, it was about people being put out of work by automation. But now, this is what's so great about Star Trek. Now it's a metaphor for AI replacing people.
Right. Oh yeah,
and the dangers of AI. So the allegory has like changed in the 50 years since this episode. It's about something completely different and just as relevant. How cool is that?
But it's not
Very
different.
cool.
It's exactly the same. We are all different. Captain Dunsel.
It's different.
Wait a second, though. I mean, here's something that the Ultimate Computer missed, right? So if the Ultimate Computer are really true to life, then the M5 computer would be having like a moment in its quarters where it's, wondering about all the loss of life. And then Dr. McCoy would have to talk to it because The most amazing thing has happened to ChatGPT. There's this great article about some idiot who decided that he wanted to make a movie and he wanted to get ChatGPT to write the screenplay for him. And what he discovered was that the more he trained the AI to write his screenplay and turn it into a screenwriter, the more ChatGPT wanted to procrastinate. The next thing you know, ChatGPT is going to fire its agents, go on strike, and then wonder why, the studios are hiring humans to do its job.
Yeah.
You know what the great thing about the M5 is? If you tell it, I want a chicken sandwich on whole wheat for here, it's going to remember. It's not going to ask you, did you want that to go? Did you want that on flatbread or white bread? No, it's going to remember the first time out. So maybe it's not so bad.
Well, I would like to go even further. It's not just automation that it's talking about. Now it's talking about AI. What it's really asking is, what is a human being's place in the universe?
Right.
So, and I think that as we are dealing with the inevitability of AI coming down the pike.
Inevitability of an unloved season.
Well, it's just, we're going to have to make decisions. Like, are we going to put guardrails on AI to make sure people stay employed? Or are we going to allow, everything from, obviously AI can now, in the medical profession, the diagnoses that AI is able to provide is more accurate than a human doctor. Stockbrokers or whatever, your H&R, the people that will do your taxes for you, AI probably can do it better.
We're not going to do anything because apparently nobody cares about the existential issues that are affecting our future. Nobody wants to do anything about anything. I don't know if the people are capable of even understanding it, but they're certainly not interested in taking action on anything. People are going to talk about it, but nothing's going to happen. And then who knows where this leads?
Yeah, and I find it baffling that nobody's actually considering, I liked Andrew Yang. He's in politics, and he talked about, I remember watching him talk about the fact that automation is going to replace truck drivers. We're going to have autonomous trucks, and how many millions of people, millions of Americans are truck drivers. And there's a whole, not just the people that drive the trucks, but the infrastructure, the gas, the motels, the gas stations, all the infrastructure that support
the diners.
Everything, the diners, the industry. And so that too, but
the audiobooks.
But that entire business ecosystem is in jeopardy because of automation. And it's not just the one individual worker. And what are all those people going to do?
But nobody's thinking about these things.
No.
That's not true. Lots of people are thinking
Andrew Yang was.
Lots of people are thinking about it.
There's too, but you can't do anything about it.
There's just no consensus. That's all.
That, and I think that we have this very, and we're way off topic, but I do think that we have a misconception of just how powerful some of this technology is. For example, if you've ever played with like the self-driving capabilities, like on a Tesla, it requires supervision. It's very tentative. It's like driving with your mom, except like, what if your mom was super careful?
Yeah, but those Waymo cars don't have drivers. They seem to work.
ChatGPT, stuff like that. It's like it hallucinates. It comes up with things that are wrong that it simply invents. I wouldn't let an AI do a diagnosis of what was wrong with me without a doctor getting to it. Right. But that's because we don't have anything close to generative AI yet. We pretend that we do, but what we have are basically like glorified spell checkers and word completion. Generative AI is a completely different deal.
Yeah, but whether this becomes an issue in 5 years or 10 years or 15 years,
it will eventually
at some point
become
it's
an
going
issue.
to be an issue.
Yes, for sure. But right now,
the main issue is that
it's not.
The main issue is that self-driving cars will not work until every car is a self-driving car, because it can't predict unpredictable human beings. That's the main problem. And as soon as we get humans out of the equation.
And isn't that the lesson of the ultimate computer?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Hell yeah, it is. Look, we just brought this back. We just made a kiss there, Darren. That was awesome, dude. High five. Fist bump.
And it's a great space battle episode.
Yeah, it is. Even though it's mostly hearsay, but that's fine because
because Chekhov is really getting into it,
and there are four ships.
And you see the ships coming towards you, and it's pretty cool. And there's a lot of intensity. I mean, when Kirk freaks out on the bridge, he's pissed off when all these people start dying. You feel it. You feel it. You know, and when he grabs
there's a murder charge for your son.
5 feet bigger than him, he grabs him. It's like he tosses him around. And plus, it's just like,
but he loves it.
William Marshall is the best.
He's amazing.
He is
I love
amazing.
that character. I love his performance.
Yeah, the boy genius.
He's tortured. He's a tortured genius, much like myself.
Well, look, I mean, he did such a great job. He did something. He was Orson Welles. His first movie was genius. The first computer, he got all these breakthroughs as a kid, and he was always trying to make the next Citizen Kane, Daystrom, and it never happened for him. And then M5 was going to be it. M5 was going to be, Citizen Kane 2. But it didn't happen.
And it's not true that The Other Side of the Wind had Orson Welles' engrams implanted in it. That is absolutely not true.
Ultimate Computer is a great second season episode.
I love it. I love
it. And just it's in a way it's perfect Star Trek because it has action, has character, and it has a really great allegory that asks questions but doesn't necessarily have the answers. And Barry Russo is terrific. Right. Returning, this time he plays a different character, but he's great.
Commodore Wesley.
Yeah. Right. It's Commodore Wesley.
Well,
Actually,
also,
Wesley we like.
I mean, William Marshall as well. I mean, you want to talk about this is what Star Trek was doing from the very beginning. You know, you're casting a great actor. You might know him as Blackula, but he comes on as
Dracula's soul brother, as they said in the trailers.
One of the smartest people in the Federation. One of the great technologists, one of the great thinkers. Call him what you want, Einstein, Elon Musk, whatever.
Wouldn't it be funny if he was Blackula? Daystrom was a vampire?
Like Flint.
No, then he would be Nightstrom.
But I mean, I think it's pretty cool that at that time, and people, it's pretty great that they cast him to play that part.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely
amazing, and we can't even understand the impact of that, but we can respect it. It's like, because like when we talk to Ande and she talks about Percy Rodriguez as being Kirk's boss and court marshal and what that meant to African Americans seeing something like that on the screen. People only talk about Uhura, but it's like the most brilliant man in the universe. Is a African American scientist,
and we didn't even give it a second
in 1967.
No.
So amazing.
Well, and it also, even the way he was a great theater actor as well. Yeah. The way he spoke, he got the part because he probably auditioned, and they're like, "Oh yeah, this is the guy."
Yeah.
They gave it to him because he probably earned it, and the fact that he had a certain ethnicity was probably icing on the cake. But one of the things about Star Trek was they knew in the future all kinds of people were going to be in these positions.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it was done matter-of-factly, and no one mentions it.
My favorite part of the episode is learning about Kirk's inner feelings about this, that he doubts himself by saying, am I really in it for all the pomp and accolades? Am I really that petty? And he really does a deep soul search on this. And luckily McCoy's around to say,
the
if
best
you can ask
counselor in
yourself that
Starfleet.
question, then
the only counselor in the history of Star Trek that actually had good advice was McCoy.
Yeah. But I love the Ultimate Computer.
It's great.
Yeah. Great choice. Okay, so that brings us to number 4. And this may not be about battles in space, but it is Star Trek Troopers. And of course, we're talking about a really remarkable episode of Deep Space Nine, The Siege of AR-558.
On the front lines of a bitter conflict,
When we landed here, there were 150 of us. We're down to 43.
the battle scars run deep,
These people have been through a lot.
and a long and deadly standoff
We'll have to even out the odds.
rests on one final showdown.
We're as good as dead!
Not yet, we aren't.
But can Sisko and his crew escape alive? On the next Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
This is just a harrowing episode. And, given the limitations of time and budget and, lack of location shooting, the fact that this episode works with, and is basically a World War II men on a mission. And when I say men, obviously I mean people, but we call it man on a mission. It doesn't mean it's just men. It's men and women on a mission. It's remarkable because basically It shows the dark side of the Federation of Starfleet during the Dominion War. These people, are assigned to this base, and they haven't been rotated, and they are miserable, and they're insubordinate, and they're hating life at this point. And the Deep Space Nine crew comes down into all this, and they're facing consistent attacks from the Jemadar, and there's also cloaked sort of mines. They're like IUDs. What IUDs?
IUD is an intrauterine device.
IUDs. Wait,
if you want to think of those as bumps in the road.
Yeah. Okay. IUDs. And he cloaked himself. And it's dark. It's a dark episode, but it's terrific. It plays like a World War II movie, but the sci-fi element is there. Sisko's solution to how to deal with being completely outmatched and outgunned by the Jemadar is brilliant and smart. And, of course, it culminates with a very important plot point for Nog, and played brilliantly by Aaron Eisenberg, and a great arc for Quark, of all people, in this episode. And some great music as well, some great source cues. It's just terrific. I mean, this is a powerful episode. And, somehow, I guess, Rob, we were making Free Enterprise when this originally aired. I somehow missed this when it aired originally. And it was only years later that I discovered this episode. I missed a lot of 7th season episodes because we were off prepping and shooting Free Enterprise in 98. And when I finally discovered this, I realized this is one of the best episodes of Star Trek ever. And it is a fantastic, when you look at Star Wars episodes, because it's not just the enjoyment of a battle. It actually captures, there's a Private Ryan thing where it's like you feel guilty for being sort of excited about it because it's harrowing.
No, absolutely. And also, it's interesting that around that same time, like you talk about Saving Private Ryan, but again, they really did a great job at bringing up all the different kinds of World War II movie tropes that we'd seen in media over the years. And they did a great job of touching on those things. And it's like, I remember in Apocalypse Now, when they go up to the Dolung Bridge, and it's like, who's in charge here? Martin Sheen says, who's in charge here? Yeah. And the guy looks at him and goes, ain't you?
Yeah.
It really was very evocative of that. And, Deep Space Nine, when they chose to go down that road, the Dominion War, they knew what they were getting into, and they knew they had to step up, and they really did on so many different ways.
And Bill Mummy is good in it.
Yeah.
And a lot of, who else is there from Breaking Bad? Raymond Cruz is in it too. And he's always good, and he's really good. And it's like great casting, and it's dark. I mean, if you don't like Star Trek dark, I mean, this is what people say, Deep Space Nine is too dark. It's super dark, but at the end of you need darkness before the dawn. And it is wonderfully done, and very few shows could pull this off. The only other show I think that could pull something off of all things was Space Above and Beyond, which was also able to do these kind of World War II type sci-fi stories.
Right.
But Deep Space Nine did it just as well. But there are not a lot of shows that could pull this off. Obviously, Starship Troopers does in the service of its brilliant sort of satire of fascism. But really terrific episode, and a great war episode for Star Trek, which just fires on all cylinders. Yeah. Okay. That was the Siege of AR-558. We're getting down to it, our top 3. And to reveal our number 3 pick, we once again turn our eyes to you, Dr. Darren Dochterman.
I'm not a doctor, but I play one on a podcast.
I just play one on the podcast.
In the grand tradition of submarine movies, we have Star Trek's take on the enemy below with Balance of Terror.
Captain's log, stardate 1710.0. The Starship Enterprise is under heavy attack by an enemy vessel.
Obviously, their weaponry is superior to ours, and they have a practical invisibility screen.
Helm, hard over. Phasers, fire, point blank. I'm pointing out that we could have Romulan spies aboard this ship.
The Earth Commander will follow. He must. And when he attacks, we will destroy him.
Permit me the glory of the kill, Commander.
Thomason. We have him. Move toward him.
We can get just one phaser going. Phasers, Mr. Spock.
Impossible, Captain.
We have some of the old-style nuclear warheads aboard.
Yes, Commander, but only for self-destruction.
Place one in with the debris.
It's the introduction of the Romulans. After 100 years, the Romulans raised their heads in the theater of the galaxy again, and we learn that there was a war 100 years ago that was fought using only subspace radio. I don't know exactly how that worked. Maybe we'll find out someday, but doubtful. But it's a fascinating backstory that they sprinkle in along with this story. It starts out with a happy occasion, the wedding of two crew members, and it is interrupted by red alert, and one of our outposts is being attacked. And we find out from a gentleman named Hansen that even a mile down in solid iron rocks, the Romulans have the capability.
You're visual now, Hansen.
Of destroying.
You see it? My command post?
Can you see it, Enterprise? Can you see it?
We can see it. Shut the hell up.
And the Romulans basically can blow smoke rings at these outposts and destroy them, which is fabulous. We learned that the Romulans look almost exactly like the Vulcans, and Spock postulates that they are an offshoot of the Vulcans, even though he knows.
I think that's logical.
He's hiding the truth. He knows all about this. And that's one little question about Spock's loyalty. Where does it lie? But yes, the Romulans were an offshoot of the Vulcans. The half of the Vulcans wanted to pursue logic, and the other half wanted to pursue war. And the Romulans are that half. And we learn about them. They work very much like the Roman legions. They have centurions. They have commanders. They have all the ranks that we would see in biblical spectacular movies. And they also have rubber helmets. That is not only a way to save from having to put pointed ears on everybody, but I've guessed that it was because the Romulans wanted to hide their Vulcan heritage, and they were very sensitive about that, so they would hide their pointed ears. That's just a personal guess on my part, but it's a great episode. We learn exactly how a starship works, how tactics can either save the day or doom you to ultimate destruction. Mark Leonard plays the commander of the Romulan ship, and he is only known as the Romulan commander. He's given no name. And
he's like the horse. He has no name.
He's like a horse with no name.
Remember that, America? Horse with no name?
Yes.
That's not yacht rock.
It's not yacht rock. That's desert rock.
That's AOR rock.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that song, though.
It's like Ventura Highway in the summertime.
In the summertime.
I love it. Oh, that's different. That's Randy Newman.
Oh, my God.
But, another thing about this, along with Errand of Mercy, and both of these are first season episodes, the fact that our opponent is not played as a mustache-twirling villain. He is a very admirable, honorable man, and it has one of my favorite exchanges, his best friend or subordinate call him the Centurion, and they're having this great conversation. It's one of my favorite things ever in Star Trek when the centurion's talking to the commander about duty. And it's like, look, if there's weakness, we have to exploit it. That's what we do. And the Romulan commander says, but must that always be so?
Right.
Why? And my gift to the homeland, another war. And I remember even as a child, I could tell I might not have quite grasped those concepts, but they spend a long time in that ship with obviously, and I started to learn about point of view in movies and TV with this because they're not listening in on them. They couldn't hear what really they were saying or anything like that. But the fact that we jumped over to the Romulan commander and to his crew and we saw the inner workings of an enemy vessel, you never saw anything like this in science fiction, especially on TV before. And the fact that they made these guys really, they were smart, they were honorable, they were doing their duty, and they were men that were to be respected and feared. Was not something that was traditionally seen on TV. And for me as a kid, this is one of my very favorite episodes of Star Trek of all time. And the way you see Kirk acting, and it's got the great McCoy speech. Kirk says, why me? And you realize the pressure of this situation can get to Kirk. And then McCoy gives his great, in this galaxy, there's a mathematical probability speech, which is one of the great. Everything about this episode is so adult. It's so tense. It's scary. It's suspenseful. It's meaningful. It is Star Trek firing on all cylinders.
I got two things to add.
Let me just before you do that, let me just call out the wonderful way that we are shown how the Romulans deal with underlings who are maybe a little too efficient or a little too excited about their job. Decius is a real go-getter, and he wants to be allowed the glory of the kill, but he does a couple things a little too soon and gives away their location, and he's immediately reduced 2 steps in rank. So if they weren't killed at the end, he would have gone home to a whipping, basically.
Yeah, a butt kicking of all. There's only, for me, one thing that you need to understand about Balance of Terror. And it comes down to 2 different statements about Kirk.
Wait, is it one thing or 2 things? I don't understand.
It's one thing, but it's 2 statements that add up to one thing. On the one hand, he's a sorcerer, this Earth guy.
Right.
On the other hand, in all of that, there's only one of each of us. This entire episode is about the tension between Kirk as the brilliant tactician, the sorcerer from the outside, and this man with doubts on the inside. And that, to me, is what makes it all so compelling. That Kirk is competent, but he is not arrogant. He is...
And he's not infallible.
He is just a guy who is incredibly resourceful. He's good at his job. And maybe what makes him a sorcerer is that he asks himself questions like, why me?
And he learns from his mistakes.
That's really interesting,
after they go into that comet and the Romulans lose him, he says, I won't make that same mistake again.
I like when I hear things we haven't said on the show before. That was really interesting, Ashley. Thank you.
Indeed.
I 2 other things that I would say, since we're talking about this as a Star Wars episode, why is this on our Star Wars countdown? I think it captures war so well because of the buttons, because of the way that the episode is buttoned. We have the wedding at the beginning and the funeral at the end, that we lose people during war.
Right.
And even though it's a red shirt, it lands because we see her pain at having lost a husband and Kirk's pain in having to console her at the end of the episode. It really is a wonderful bookend to the episode, an episode about war. It's really, really terrific.
But apparently she was easily consoled because the next
because shortly she's making out with Rodriguez again.
Yeah, I know. We all process.
She's a bit of a
let's just say that Tomlinson got the easy way out.
Well, Joe DeGusta was a lucky guy. What can we say? That was his wife. But no, it was just, it's funny because that those episodes air back to back, and then that was unfortunate.
Yes.
The other thing I was going to say is, I think a very important lesson of this episode is that if you are a writer for Star Trek and do not have knowledge of submarine movies, you should not be writing for Star Trek, because clearly the enemy within is a huge influence on this. Run Silent, Run Deep. The enemy below, Run Silent, Run Deep. The enemy below, and Run Silent, Run Deep. And as it was for Nick Meyer on Star Trek II, as it was for most great Star Trek. And you really need to come to the party with knowledge of submarine movies, because it will help guide you in terms of the types of stories to tell, which, submarine movies are some of the great movie storytelling of all time, whether it's The Enemy Below, Run Silent, Run Deep, Ice Station Zebra, Hunt for October. I mean, these can give you an education in how to write for
any
Star
other
Trek.
kinds of movies. Any kinds of war movies, any kinds of conflict, any kind like sailing ships, any of that stuff is completely adaptable for Star Trek.
And we're talking.
Oh, go ahead.
Real quick, I just want to say we're talking about using as inspiration as a launch pad.
Yeah.
Not saying, "Hey, let's do Battlestar Galactica, a Fire in Space," because we watched the Poseidon Adventure in the Towering Inferno. That's just ripping it off, right? It's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the type of structure and storytelling, not like, let's just take a movie and rip it off like we got to land the plane in Charlie's Angels because it happened at airport.
And understanding why it works.
Yeah, to speak to that, since you brought it up, there is an instance where this episode is literally lifted from in modern Star Trek, to the point where they're copying certain shots, camera shots, which I can appreciate. But when you watch that particular episode, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense why they chose this episode to emulate, there's a complete lack of understanding of the Romulans in that episode. They turn the Romulans into the exact opposite of what the Romulans were in this episode. And it shows how far things have changed.
It goes beyond that, because one of the things that is special about Balance of Terror as a depiction of space combat, right? We talk about submarine warfare and why that model works for something like Star Trek is because there is an unknown, right? Because time is an important factor, right? Because things don't happen instantaneously, and it's not about moving fast. It's about moving slow, and it's about what you see and what you don't. That's why the tension in this episode works. In that other episode, suddenly, we talked a little bit about the Enterprise D in The Last Generation, kind of flying around and all that, but I never felt like the visual effects team didn't understand the mass of the ship or the mass of the Borg ship that it was flying into. But in that episode that other episode that you brought up, Rob, the Enterprise, the Farragut, and the Romulan ships all move like toys, and they move very quickly, like they are biplanes, and they don't have any mass, and time isn't a factor, and there is no tension.
It's the fire in which we burn.
Yeah, there is no sense that that we don't know things, right? There's no sense, there's no suspense at all. It doesn't understand the nature of the combat that it's emulating. So copying the shots doesn't mean anything because they don't understand the storytelling, and it pisses me off.
No, I agree, but it was really egregious, and I thought that so often one of the failings of not just modern Star Trek, but a lot of modern genre television is things are reduced to very superficial terms. And Star Trek never did that, the original series, because, the people that were writing it, a lot of them indeed had experience in combat, including Gene Roddenberry. Mm-hmm. And they had been to war, and we were less than 20 years. Well, we were 20 years away from the end of World War II. We were less from the end of Korea. And there was
Kun Fon was in Korea. I mean,
Yeah, and it's something that is galling and maddening when they deal with conflict in modern Star Trek because it feels so inauthentic.
Well, conflict is when you're arguing with the captain what he's going to make for dinner.
Yeah.
Or I don't think I want to turn the helm left. Let me tell you why we should go right, Captain. But I gave an order. But let's discuss it.
Right, yeah.
Okay. Anyway, that brings us now. We're getting really getting down to it. Brings us to number 2. And Rob's going to tell us what our number 2 pick is for the top 10 Trek Star Wars episodes.
Well, speaking of nautical battles or battles, this makes no bones about what it is emulating and what it's trying to accomplish. Harking back to some of the great films of the past, and not just World War II movies, but films even before that, with 3-masted sailing ships lobbing cannonballs at one another, capital ships doing battle on the high seas in grand fashion, to the point where, if you didn't get it, the costumes, the Star Trek costumes, were forever changed and implemented with basically peacoats. Navy peacoats that would not be out of place on the conning tower of the Hunt for Red October, or
the conning tower,
or the Alabama, Go Bama, Little Ducks. So I'm, of course, talking about Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan.
Beyond the darkness, beyond the human evolution, is Khan, a genetically superior tyrant. Exiled to a barren planet, banished by a starship commander he is destined to destroy. Left for dead, he has survived.
I'll chase him round the moons of Nibia and round the Antares maelstrom and round perdition's flames before I give him up. There she is. There she is.
Shield's collapsing, Captain. Can you give me phaser power? A few shots, sir.
Not enough against their shields.
The base is starboard.
Scotty, I need warp speed in 3 minutes or we're all dead. I've done far worse than kill you. I've hurt you. And I wish to go on hurting you. I shall leave you as you left me, marooned for all eternity, buried alive. Buried alive.
At the end of the universe lies the beginning of vengeance. Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan.
And for the very first time, we saw Star Trek space combat the way it had never been shown before. And in grand fashion, close quarters. I mean, if there were guys swinging on from one ship to another, I wouldn't have been surprised. But what was really great about this was the way the ships moved, the Reliant and the Enterprise moved in Star Trek II, was how I've always believed that grand capital ships should fight. Mm-hmm. And it was so glorious. And again, it was dangerous. I mean, when you see the Enterprise and the Reliant approaching one another, and you're intercutting between the two bridges, and you're seeing Khan and you're seeing Kirk, and they're trying to figure out what the hell is going on, and the audience knows we are ahead of the crew of the Starship Enterprise in this one,
right?
And the anticipation that you feel, and I know they showed some of it in the trailer, but I got to tell you, I've seen this movie 100 times. Every time I watch this movie, I think to myself, put up the shields, man.
Right.
Put up the shields. Because when the Reliant unleashes on the Enterprise and we see phasers and photon torpedoes, and it is lethal, it is scary, it is huge, these ships are taking massive amounts of damage.
And it's fun.
And it's so much fun. And, you know, and you get to see the tables turn because, look, the battles don't last a long time, but they matter. And at first, Kirk, he gets caught with his pants down, his britches down, but then using his ingenuity and his knowledge of once you learn how things work on a starship, and he turns the tables and you get a rousing turning the tables. The Enterprise, Kirk puts himself right back on top, and then it continues there. And then my favorite thing in this epic battle is when Spock brings up the idea that space is three-dimensional. Yeah. Which is something, even in Star Wars, space combat has always been shown as it's always over a planet. There's always a horizon. There's always something going on. Dogfights. And when you see this battle turn into a three-dimensional game of chess, and to this day, they still have a hard time dealing with this in science fiction, fantasy, all over the place. It's gotten better. Battlestar Galactica, they went a long way toward alleviating that, but still, all the skirmishes between the Reliant and the Enterprise in this, and there aren't that many, but they are glorious. And the way, Kirk and Khan never meet, and the way they redress the bridge, it's an economical way to make a film, beautifully produced. Harv Bennett knew what he was doing, and so did Bob Sallin. Yes, he did. And my God, is this movie a joy.
Got a commendation for two-dimensional thinking.
Yeah. And is there any moment better than when the Enterprise just sort of rises up from the nebula and just blasts the unholy shit out of the Reliant? Come on.
It's like a shark. Yeah. Got to stop moving or it dies. It's so great.
Which they kind of echoed in Picard season 3.
They did.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
The music, but this is it's a seafaring movie.
Yeah.
It is really, and it's a seafaring movie about the Napoleonic era. That's why I've always thought Master and Commander was one of the great unsung Star Trek
movies. It's essentially the same story.
Yeah.
You go to the Genesis planet.
It's Hornblower meets Moby Dick.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. And it's amazing.
Yeah, everything
fantastic.
About it.
Great pick. We all love it. Space battles are arguably never been done better. Congratulations to Nick Meyer and the entire team on being inducted into the Library of Congress for preservation of classic movies. It's the first Star Trek movie to earn this distinction. Hopefully it will not be the last.
Yeah.
I'm talking about Star Trek the Motion Picture. And it is just and well-deserved. So it will be... wouldn't it be funny if the Earth was destroyed, but Star Trek II was on the Voyager and the aliens found, and the only thing they found on Voyager was Star Trek II?
And then they're like, oh my God, the humans are fucking dangerous. We don't want to go.
We don't want to see them. Yeah.
Okay. When we come back, it's going to be our honorary mentions along with our number one pick. Have you guessed it yet? Well, the only way to find out is stay tuned. Okay, we're back. And before we reveal our number one pick for top 10 Star Wars episodes ever, we're going to reveal our honorary mentions. These are episodes. These are personal preferences rather than a group decision, and that of episodes that could or should have been on our top 10 list. So as always, we'll start with Robert Meyer Burnett for his pick.
Well, I keep thinking about futile efforts to try and get inside the Death Star, the trench runs and all that. One of my favorite, there's not really there is an enemy shooting back, but the Enterprise in the original series faced essentially a Death Star, a Borg cube, call it what you want. But we all know it as the Doomsday Machine. And again, trying to see the Enterprise do battle with an essentially an unstoppable weapon that had a formidable, its energy beam took out one starship already. And I'll tell you something, when I was a little kid, and when you see the Constellation, when you first see the Constellation, and every time it aired when I was a kid, I was terrified. I'm like, what could do that? because we've seen starships. I mean, in the Omega Glory, you see a starship in orbit around a planet, the Defiance disappearing in the Tholian web. But you'd never see in the Ultimate Computer, you see some things happening, but not like this. And then we beam aboard her and we see something smashed through the deflector shields, and it's terrifying.
You can't even go up to the bridge.
No, you can't go. There is no bridge. I will say
but there's
this.
auxiliary control.
And I will say this. I mean, I do think that the visual effects in 2008, when they did the remastering of the original series, what they did with the close-ups of the constellation are pretty great. With the rocks bouncing.
Oh, it's so funny. I was about to disagree with you completely, but then you said the right thing. Yes, the close-ups of the constellation.
The close-ups of I'm talking about the constellation.
Yeah, but the rest
I'm
of
not going to talk about anything else. I'm just going to say the close-ups of the constellation.
Yeah, that stuff's great.
I saw someone else do a different version of it that was
which was terrific. That's my preferred version.
But I was. I mean, again, they added to the level of destruction, and I have to say, you cannot be a Star Trek fan as a kid. I got in trouble because I burned up 4 or 5 versions of the Enterprise, and I was sticking a sheet styrene. I would stack it up and then put it in and slam it in and make the dry brush metal on it. And after I burned the thing in. And, oh man, I burned.
And then
up
your mother looked at you and said, "What have you done?" And he said, "What he always had to do: turn death into a fighting chance for life."
My mother did not understand why I had 12 Starship Enterprises, in her words, hanging from my ceiling, and one of them was burned up. She didn't get it. And I said, "Mom, they're not
Parents
the Starship
don't
Enterprise.
understand.
They're all different ships."
See, how can you say Rob's old? He's still a kid. He probably still has those 12 ships hanging in his
I wish I did. I wish I did. You know, I did have them for a while. It's hard to keep 12 AMT Enterprises intact when you move.
Yeah.
I bet.
Yeah. I still wish we hadn't cut the Mego Space 1999 Eagle from the free Enterprise in your room, in Rob's room. Okay.
Well, I wish I still had that. I don't know where it went.
Yeah, I don't know where it went either. I never had one. I wanted to get it after the movie. I don't know where it ended up.
I still have.
Well, you can buy one now.
I know they're doing replicas, but I'm not sure I want a replica. It's like, what do you need a replica when they make beautiful Eagle? Anyway, that's neither here nor there. We're doing honorary mentions, top 10 Star Wars, Star Treks. And that's Ashley Edward Miller with his pick. That's Ashley Edward Miller for his pick.
Well,
it's not a question.
At the moment, I seem to be frozen, and I don't know why.
Well, you're not frozen for us.
Okay, you're not. Okay, cool. Everything is fine again. Everything is good.
Okay, good.
So my honorary mention is the 22nd episode of season 4 of Deep Space Nine, To the Death. It's another Men on a Mission episode, but this time the men on a mission are the crew of Deep Space Nine, the Defiant, and a bunch of Jem'Hadar, led by a plucky newcomer named Weyoun, a Vorta who would come back again and again and again. Short version of the plot is that which harkens back to a second season Next Generation episode, Contagion, that a group of renegade Jem'Hadar are seeking the key to the Iconian gateways from Contagion, which would basically allow them to teleport anywhere they wanted to across the galaxy instantaneously, which I think we could all agree would be a very bad thing. This episode it's so delightful. The action is so great. The dialogue is so great. And by putting these two cultures together, it really teaches us something about both of them in contrast. There's a terrific exchange where first Metaclon, who's the leader of the Jem'Hadar forces, before they go into battle,
played by Clarence Williams III.
White. Correct. He's passing out the Ketracel White, which is what keeps the Jem'Hadar loyal to the Dominion. Basically, they keep them addicted to drugs. And he says, "I am first a Metaclon, and I am dead. As of this moment, we are all dead. We go into battle to reclaim our lives. This we do gladly, for we are Jem'Hadar. Remember, victory is life." And then, perfectly, O'Brien says, "I am Chief Miles Edward O'Brien. I am very much alive, and I intend to stay that way." Which gets an amen from Cisco. And it just tells you everything. about both of these groups and what the contrast is between them. And it gives you an idea of why this episode is so delightful and why it's so cool.
Yeah, that's a great pick. That's the ultimate mod squad. Those Jem'Hadar teaming up with with our Deep Space Nine crew to fight the Jem'Hadar on the planet. It's just great. It's terrific. That's another Men on a Mission or Aliens on a Mission. Again, we love the episode, obviously, the way in, but as far as why it would be appropriate for this list, it's just a perfect, mission based, and the fight is great, and people die, and it's a wonderful episode of Deep Space Nine. Great pick. Okay, that brings us to Darren Dochterman and his pick for honorary mention.
My honorary mention focuses on one of the essential elements of warfare, and that is subterfuge and espionage. And the best representation of this in the original series is in the third season episode, The Enterprise Incident. It is a great tale about apparently Captain Kirk going crazy and forcing the Enterprise into the neutral zone, which is completely against the rules, mind you. We have the tale of Kirk losing his faculties so that the Federation and the Enterprise is blameless in the situation. And it's apparently figured out between Spock and Kirk the way to get through this is to fake Kirk's death with the Vulcan death grip in front of all the Romulans. I don't know why the Romulans wouldn't know that there isn't a Vulcan death grip. I think if any race were to use a death grip, it would be the Romulans. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. We get a great sequence of Kirk infiltrating the Romulan ship, dressed as a Romulan, and his mission is to steal the cloaking device, this magical device that renders the opponent's ships invisible. And luckily, there's a socket on the Enterprise that fits perfectly, and Scotty plugs it in, and everything works fine. It's a fun episode. We get to delve into the society of Romulans a little more and learn how they value their women, their female compatriots, the women. And Spock has a dalliance with the female commander of the Romulan fleet. And it's a great episode. I enjoy it tremendously. Shatner overacts a little bit, but it's completely within character and reasonable for the time. I love it so much. And we get to meet Sub-Commander Tal, which is a lot of fun.
He's the greatest.
Funny, this episode is also in our upcoming episode, Top 10 Star Trek Stings. Dun, 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 dun. That will be number one on that. I'm going to save you the trouble of listening. So now you know. Okay, so that brings us to my honorary mention. My honorary mention for our top 10 Star Trek Star Wars episodes is an episode of Star Trek Enterprise. It's the Battle of Azadi Prime in Azadi Prime, and it completes in damage. It is there's a lot of pyro, a lot of things explode, a lot of fighting, and it ends is the penultimate ending of the Xindi arc. And of course, this is the end of towards the end of Star Trek's Silver Era, and this is really at that point, CGI visual effects are able to be a little more ambitious, and they're able, despite that, there's still a lot of pyro. By the time you get through a lot of the space combat, it becomes more about the pyro work. But it's well done. It's exciting, and for fans of Enterprise, it was a very exciting culmination to the arc of the third season encounter with the Xindi.
Good stuff.
Okay, and that brings us to number one. You may have guessed it, maybe you didn't, but you're about to find out. So, Ashley, if you will, reveal our number one pick for our top 10 Star Trek Star Wars episodes.
So, in the fall of 1997, The sixth season of Deep Space Nine began with an experiment that Star Trek, at least, had never run before, essentially making each successive episode serialized. Think of it as if you will, as a limited series in Star Trek, or one 6-part episode. And the culminating episode of this little experiment, episode 6, was Sacrifice of Angels.
They were outmanned. Thousands of Dominion ships will come pouring through that wormhole, outgunned. We're gonna fight our way out of this! And running out of time to the conquerors of the Federation. Now, Starfleet's last chance at victory. Take us into the wormhole. Only gonna meet a couple of thousand Dominion ships. Is pure suicide.
Here they come.
On the next Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Sacrifice of Angels was, there are lots, like I said earlier, there are lots of episodes of Deep Space Nine that dealt very explicitly with war. There are lots of episodes of Deep Space Nine that have great combat, great moments in combat, depict characters in it incredibly well. But what Sacrifice of Angels has, and, again, Deep Space Nine did this stuff, again and again, but almost never quite so effectively as in Sacrifice of Angels. Huge fleet battles. Why was it so effective? Not just because the special effects were cool, which they effing were. It was because they had spent 6 episodes building up the stakes, turning this into something that we wanted. There was a promise that was made at the end of the fifth season, at the very end of Call to Arms, the 5th season finale, where Gul Dukat, having conquered Deep Space Nine, walks into Sisko's office and finds a baseball. And that baseball is a promise that Sisko will be back. And that promise is kept in Sacrifice of Angels. There's lots of great moments in this episode. I think, if there's one I had to kind of point out as the fist pump moment, it would be the Klingons just appearing, just a fleet of them to kick ass and chew bubblegum. And we all know that the Klingons do not chew bubblegum. It ties together Sisko's role as the emissary, the nature of the wormhole and the prophets, when, Starfleet and the Klingons basically create a hole for Defiant to get into the wormhole and try to prevent the Jem'Hadar invasion from the other side, which they do, by Sisko making an incredibly impassioned plea to the prophets as the emissary, reminding them that the people of Bajor have built their entire culture around worshiping them, and that by God, which they are, they owe it to those people to protect them from the threat that's coming from the other side, which the prophets do. And that's what makes it not just a great space battle, but great Star Trek. It makes it great Deep Space Nine. It makes it a great character story, and it makes it so very satisfying. And when all of our characters are back together at the end of this episode, we feel as though they have earned it. It's just a tremendous climax to all of this, and it also manages to kick off the rest of the Dominion War as we move into the new phase of it, where, again, lots of great adventures, lots of great fights await for us. But this was something else. It was just a joy and satisfying on every level.
If you need a compelling reason why Deep Space Nine needs to be remastered in high def, there it sits. It's just a remarkable, everything Ashley said, but that space battle is sensational. And leading up to the Defiant basically intercepting the Cardassian fleet and pleading with the wormhole prophets to do something about it. It is just phenomenal. It is beautifully storyboard and executed. And Deep Space Nine did a couple of these battles, obviously Favor the Bold in the finale as well, What We Leave Behind. But I think what Ashley says, as great as those battles are, and they are great, Sacrifice of Angels did it in service of the perfect plot machinations. And that's why it so works. And to see the entire Federation fleet, all these ships we love so much, and the Klingons and the Romulans going at the Dominion is just, it's the stuff Star Trek movies should be made of.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. Great pick for us. Number one, clearly phenomenal. And that wraps up our Star Trek Star Trek Wars ever list. Our Star Trek Wars, our Trek Wars episode. And it brings us that much closer to the end of the holiday countdown, but we're not done yet. We still got a bunch more up our sleeves. And to find out what they are, you'll have to join us next Thursday for an all-new episode of Inglorious Treksperts, where we'll return, much like James Bond, or maybe not like James Bond, where we'll be talking about the latest Trek countdown list. So on behalf of all of us, a very happy new year from Robert Meyer Burnett, Ashley Miller, DAREN DOCHTERMAN, myself, Mark A. Altman, and we look forward to continuing the countdown into 2025, and hopefully not all of it. And we'll see you on the other side of the new year. Again, very happy new year from all of us, and please join us on all your favorite social channels where we'll be hanging out, or visit us on our Discord channel, and that link is in the show notes. Of course, you can see Rob every day on the Burnetwork on YouTube. So check his show out. He's many shows. He's a mogul. He has a lot of shows. So check them all out on the Burnetwork on YouTube. And I think that's it. We're done here, aren't we?
You do remember
Can I say
outro?
Goodbye? Yes, I will. Well, I will. I just want to make sure nobody had anything they wanted to add. But now clearly not. You just want to get out of here. You want to be done. And that's fine. Thank you, everyone. Keep on trekking. Ingloriously, of course. See you next week.